Thank you for downloading the book from the royallib.com free e-library, http://royallib.com. All books by the author, http://royallib.com/author/Pruntsov_Vasily.html. The same book in other formats, http://royallib.com/book/Pruntsov_Vasily/Uchis_Vladid_Rachnoi_Granadoi.html. Enjoy reading. Basil Pruntsov. Learn to use a hand grenade. Combat purpose of hand grenades. In modern combat, strong fire from weapons of all types and calibers forces fighters to seek shelter in the ground, trenches, dugouts, and crevices. When the enemy is well hidden in the trenches, it is very difficult to hit him with a bullet from a rifle or machine gun, even at close range. In this case, hand grenades come to the aid of the attacker. A hand grenade thrown by an attacker into a defender's trench from a distance of 45 to 35 meters strikes several defenders at once with its explosion and clears a whole section of the trench from them. The fighters of the attacker, rushing after the explosion of grenades into bayonets, meet only weak resistance from the surviving fighters of the defense. So a hand grenade clears the way for a bayonet in an attack. But hand grenades are no less important for the defender. If the defender knows how to use hand grenades well and does not lose his head, he meets the attacking enemy with friendly fire from hand grenades from a distance of 40 to 45 meters. A wall of deafening explosions immediately rises in front of the attacker, and a thick fan of fragments strikes all living things. Some of the attackers are hit by fragments, the rest seek salvation in the ground, stop, dig in. So the fire of hand grenades blocks the attacker's path. Rice. 1. The use of hand grenades in the attack. But hand grenades are used not only to repulse infantry attacks. With them, courageous fighters also beat off the attack of tanks. For this purpose, either ordinary hand grenades are used, which are tied together in packs of several pieces, or special anti-tank hand grenades. A pack of hand grenades, skillfully thrown from a trench under an attacking tank, interrupts its caterpillar, the tank stops and becomes the prey of our fighters. Hand grenades are especially widely used in night combat. Making a sudden, night attack, for example, on an enemy trench, imperceptibly steals up to the throw distance and immediately throws grenades at the trench. Rice. 2. The use of hand grenades in defense. Explosions cause heavy casualties in the trench and stun the survivors. The attackers rush after the grenades with bayonets, stab and capture the soldiers who survived in the trench. However, this is not always the case in combat. If the soldiers occupying the trench hear the approach of the attackers in advance, they can also meet them with grenades. Grenades thrown from the trenches at the attackers inflict heavy losses on the attackers and often put the survivors to flight. On August 6, 1938, when attacking the Zazanaya Hill with red jaws, Senior Lieutenant Comrade Nadzuga crawls up to the wire, cuts a passage for the infantry under fire. Throws forward. A light machine gunner was wounded. The machine gun is silent. Without hesitation, Shooter Plotnikov rushes to the machine gun. He immediately opens destructive fire. A squad of samurai attacks Plotnikov from the flank. The squad leader Zakharov hurries to help him. Throwing grenades, he laid down 4 in place, the rest of the samurai flee in panic. After mastering the red parts of the Zazanaya height, the Japanese did not want to reconcile with the loss of height. Brutal, shouting "Banzai," they climbed over the stones to the hill. Our fighters let them in at close range, and then threw them with hand grenades. This is how the repeated counterattacks of the Japanese fought off. Most of the attackers remained dead on the spot, and the survivors rolled back down. On the night of July 30th to 31st, during the Japanese attack on our border guards, the outpost stubbornly defended the border. Rifle fire jumped from place to place and was immediately identified by a barrier wall along the border. Machine gunners Chernov, Chernopiatko, and Zuev destroyed the enemy with red-hot lead lava. Lieutenant Kristolyubov fired grenades of his choice, slowly, only when the outlines of the enemy shadow were clearly visible. The samurai could not stand the annihilating fire. The first attack on the Soviet heights ended in failure. Now let's figure out what combat properties make a hand grenade so necessary in modern combat. These properties will be as follows. 1. The ability to hit behind closures. A bullet cannot hit an enemy sitting at the bottom of a trench, in a crack, in a dugout, in a stone house, but it is possible with a grenade. The grenade will fall to the bottom of the trench and hit everyone in the trench. If you throw a grenade through the window of a house, it will beat everyone who fits inside in the room where the grenade hit. 2. The power of defeat, the ability to hit many at once. This is very important in surprise attacks by small forces against superior enemy forces. Unexpected explosions immediately equalize forces and sow panic among those who were suddenly attacked. 3. The ability to hit in a certain radius. A hand grenade does not have to hit, like a bullet, directly into the target. If the grenade falls and is 3 to 5 meters from the target, it will hit the target with shrapnel. This is especially important in night battles when grenades are thrown by ear at the flickering silhouettes of the enemy. 4. Strong crushing effect resulting from the explosion of grenades. This property allows you to use grenades to repel tank attacks. Hand grenades are powerful weapons in the hands of the skilled fighter. They fully deserve the name given to them by the People's Commissar of Defense Marshal of the Soviet Union, Comrade Voroshilov, pocket artillery. What are hand grenades? Currently, there are a lot of different types of hand grenades. Their device and purpose are different. First of all, let's look at how a hand grenade explodes. When preparing a grenade for throwing, a fighter puts an ignition mechanism in it on a safety platoon and charges the grenade, that is, inserts a fuse into it. Just before throwing a grenade, the fighter pushes back, or removes, depending on the device, the fuse, and the ignition mechanism remains in the cocked position. At the moment of the throw, the firing pin of the ignition mechanism descends, and the fuse of the grenade ignites. The fuse burns for 3.5 to 7 seconds. During this time, a thrown grenade flies the throw distance and falls at the target. When the fire reaches the detonator in the heat of the moment, the grenade explodes. Depending on the range of the throw and the burning time of the fuse, hand grenades explode approximately 1 to 4 seconds after the fall, which means that in all cases, a burning grenade will lie at the target for several moments at first, and then it will explode. Thus, the grenades of the described device light up at the fighter's hand, fly the distance to the target in a burning state, and explode when the fire reaches the detonator. Such grenades are called remote-action hand grenades. There is another type of grenade in which the explosion turns out like this. When preparing a grenade for throwing, a fighter puts the ignition mechanism on the safety platoon and charges the grenade. Before throwing, he pulls back, takes out the fuse and throws the grenade at the target. But in the grenades of such a device there is another fuse that keeps the ignition mechanism in the firing position even after the grenade is thrown, while the sleep flies to the target. Thanks to this, the grenade does not catch fire at the moment of throwing and does not burn in flight. As soon as the grenade falls at the target or encounters some obstacle, tank armor, bushes near the enemy trench, fence, window frame, etc., the fuse holding the ignition mechanism in the combat position falls out of the shock and releases the drummer. From the action of the striker, the detonator of the grenade ignites and the grenade instantly explodes. Thus, these grenades explode on impact at the target, or on hitting the target. Hand grenades of such a device are called percussion hand grenades. Which hand grenades are better and why? A remote-action hand grenade, correctly thrown and ignited at the time of the throw, will inevitably explode 3.5 to 7 seconds after the throw. It does not matter where the grenade falls, in the snow, on solid ground, in a swamp, in water, on a stretched camouflage net over the enemy's trench, the explosion will definitely occur at the set time. This ensures the reliability of remote hand grenades. If a remote hand grenade ignites in the hands of a fighter due to improper handling, he always has time, 3.5 to 7 seconds, to throw it away from himself and avoid defeat. This ensures the safety of handling remote hand grenades. But remote hand grenades also have a big drawback. The fact is that the average throw distance, 35 meters, a hand grenade flies in 2.5 seconds. This means that if the fuse is designed for 3.5 seconds of burning, then the grenade after falling at the target will lie before the explosion for 1 second, and if the fuse is designed for 7 seconds, then the grenade will lie at the target for 4.5 seconds. In 1 second, the enemy, of course, will not be able to do anything, but in 4.5 seconds he can either hide from defeat or even throw a burning grenade back to the one who threw it. The Japanese in the battles near Lake Khasan used remote hand grenades with a fuse burning time of 7 to 8 seconds. Red Army fighters who participated in hand-to-hand combat recall cases when they grabbed hand grenades thrown by the Japanese and threw them back, hitting the Japanese with their own weapons. It is clear that the noted disadvantage of remote hand grenades is very easy to eliminate. It is necessary to make fuses with a short burning time, 3.5 to 4 seconds. Grenades with such fuses are quite safe for themselves and will not allow the enemy to escape defeat. Impact hand grenades explode instantly upon impact at the target. However, such grenades do not always explode. For the explosion, a push of a certain force is needed for the fuse to fall out. When a grenade falls on hard ground, the push will be sufficient to explode the grenade, but if it falls into soft snow or on a camouflage net stretched over a trench, the push will be weak and the grenade may not explode. If mishandled, percussion hand grenades have an instantaneous explosion. Thus, it is more dangerous to handle than remote ones. For what purposes are remote and hand impact grenades more suitable? To defeat living enemy targets in close combat, it is most convenient to use remote hand grenades, but with an indispensable condition that the fuse burns no more than 4 to 5 seconds. To defeat tanks, special impact grenades will be more convenient, which will explode instantly on impact with a tank. When using remote hand grenades against tanks, it is not always possible to calculate the explosion so that it falls near the tank or under it. Sometimes the tank will walk away from a dropped grenade. Fragmentation hand grenades and special purpose hand grenades. The device of hand grenades depends on their combat purpose. If the grenade is assigned to hit the enemy with fragments, it has a relatively small bursting charge, but a strong body, from which fragments are obtained. Sometimes these fragments in the form of special lattices are laid inside the body of the grenade. Grenades of such a device are called fragmentation hand grenades. Currently, 3 types of fragmentation hand grenades are known. Fragmentation offensive, in which the fragments hit only 20 to 25 meters from the explosion site. These grenades are convenient to use in an attack on the move. Throw a grenade into the enemy's trench and run after it to strike with bayonets. The fragments will not reach the fighter who threw the grenade. Fragmentation defensive, in which fragments strike at a distance of over 100 meters from the explosion site. These grenades are only safe to use in trench defenses. Fragmentation offensive defensive, which the fighter himself can adapt before throwing so that the fragments strike at will at 20 to 25 or at 100 meters. The last grenades for combat, of course, are the most convenient, since a fighter can use the same grenade both in defensive and offensive battles. If a grenade is assigned to fight tanks, then it does not need fragments, since you cannot penetrate tank armor with a fragment. In order to put a tank out of action, it is necessary either to break through the tank armor and hit the tank crew located inside, or to destroy the tank's tracks, stop it and then destroy its crew. For the destruction of armor or caterpillars, a strong crushing effect of gases resulting from the explosion of a grenade bursting charge is necessary. Therefore, anti-tank hand grenades must have a light shell and a strong large charge, so that they will always be heavier than fragmentation grenades. The crushing action of a bursting charge is otherwise called high explosive action. On this basis, anti-tank hand grenades are referred to as high explosive hand grenades. When fighting enemy manpower with hand grenades, it is possible to hit him not only with fragments, but also in other ways, for example, with combat gases. If instead of an explosive charge, a special chemical charge is placed in a hand grenade, then when the detonator of such a grenade explodes, a cloud of gas will be obtained that can incapacitate the enemy. Such hand grenades are called chemical hand grenades. Chemical hand grenades are quite widespread in capitalist armies. Even in peacetime, the police of the capitalist countries use chemical hand grenades with a tear charge in the fight against mass actions of the proletariat. In combat, sometimes it becomes necessary to blind the enemy, that is, to deprive him of the possibility of observation. In other cases, it is required to close their units from enemy observation. For this purpose, special smoke hand grenades are used. These grenades, when detonated, begin to burn and emit heavy smoke, through which observation is impossible. The burning time of such a grenade is about 1 minute. Finally, in close combat with an enemy occupying solid buildings, houses, dugouts, blockhouses, outbuildings, etc., it is sometimes beneficial to set fire to a building in order to knock the enemy out of it. For this purpose, special incendiary hand grenades are used. Instead of a bursting charge, these grenades have a special composition that ignites from a detonator explosion and burns for 1 to 2 minutes, developing a very high temperature, over 3000 degrees. At such a temperature, raw wood ignites freely, iron and steel sheets burn through, iron melts at a temperature of 1200 degrees, while dry wood of buildings flares up very easily. It must be borne in mind that a burning incendiary grenade cannot be extinguished. Incendiary hand grenades can also be used against tanks, as a burning grenade white-hot tank armor and the tank crew had to leave the vehicle. In the heroic struggle of the Spanish people against the troops of interventionists and rebels, the Republicans used incendiary hand grenades against tanks in the form of simple glass bottles filled with gasoline. When the bottle hit the tank, it broke and flooded the armor with burning gasoline. Unbearable heat arose inside the tank, and the fascist tankers came out and surrendered. The device of hand grenades for special purposes. High explosive, chemical, smoke and incendiary hand grenades are collectively referred to as special purpose hand grenades. The design of their mechanisms usually does not differ from the design of the mechanisms of fragmentation hand grenades. All the difference lies only in the charge and fuse. Thus, a hand grenade of the same type, with the same mechanism, can be fragmentation, high explosive, chemical, smoke and incendiary. You can find out exactly what kind of grenade it is by special identification inscriptions on the grenade shell, chemical, incendiary, etc. Such a device is of great importance when training fighters to throw hand grenades. You have to study only 2 to 3 different mechanisms, not 5 to 6. The methods of preparation and throwing for all grenades with the same mechanism will be the same, only they need to be thrown at different targets. So, in modern armies the following types of hand grenades are used. According to the method of explosion, remote action hand grenades, impact hand grenades. By combat purpose, fragmentation hand grenades to destroy enemy manpower with fragments, hand grenades for special purposes. Hand grenades for special purposes, high explosive, anti-tank, chemical, smoke, incendiary. The Red Army is armed with 3 samples of hand grenades. Fragmentation offensive defensive hand grenade arranged 1933. Fragmentation offensive defensive hand grenade arranged 1914-30. Fragmentation defensive hand grenade brand F1 with Koveshnikov's fuse. Any of these grenades, if necessary, can also be used as a special purpose hand grenade. Hand grenade arranged 1933. Hand grenade arrived 1933, RGD 33, Figure 3, is designed to hit the enemy with shrapnel in close combat, both in attack and defense. Rice. 3. Hand grenade arranged 1933. 1. Body. 2. Housing cover. 3. Braking sprocket. 4. Central tube. 5. Valve fuse. 6. Defensive cover. 7. Bursting charge. 8. Outer tube of the handle. 9. Inner tube of the handle. 10. Insert. 11. Slots. 12. Combat brace. 13. Drummer. 14. The bottom of the case. 15. Mainspring. 16. Fuse. 17. Tape. 18. Support nut. 19. Fuse valve. 20. Cover latch. 21. Pin for fixing the cover. According to the method of obtaining an explosion, it belongs to remote action hand grenades, as it lights up at the moment of throw and explodes after 3.5 to 4 seconds. Weighs a hand grenade arranged 1933 with a normal defensive case on 750 grams, with a lightweight one, 625 grams, and without a case, 500 grams. The protective cover is freely put on the body of the grenade and removed from it at the request of the fighter. All grenades are produced from the factory with protective covers put on and in this form are given to the fighter. If in battle, when defending a trench, you have to throw grenades to repulse an enemy attack, then the soldiers use grenades with defensive covers. With such throwing, the throwing range reaches 30 to 40 meters. From the explosion of a grenade with a defensive cover, about 2,200 fragments are obtained. The heaviest fragments resulting from the defensive cover are highly damaging at a distance of up to 100 meters from the site of the grenade explosion. If the throwing of a grenade is carried out in an attack, on the move, the fighter, before throwing, removes the defensive cover and throws the grenade without it. In this case, the throwing range reaches 40 to 50 meters, the explosion produces up to 2,000 fragments, but lighter, which affect only 25 meters from the explosion site. Therefore, a fighter, throwing a grenade, can run to strike with bayonets without risking being hit by fragments of his grenade. Hand grenade arranged 1933 is quite safe to store and handle and is very convenient for throwing, more convenient than all other hand grenades, both ours and foreign ones. It consists of a grenade body with a central tube folded into 3 or 4 layers of metal tape, notched into squares, giving light fragments during an explosion, an explosive charge placed inside the grenade body, a fuse, a handle with an igniting mechanism assembled in it, a defensive cover that is put on the body of the grenade from the outside and giving heavy fragments during the explosion. The body of the grenade, figure 4, is cylindrical. It is made of ordinary black tin, which is painted with paint so that the grenade does not rust. From above, the side opposite to the handle, the body is closed with a flat lid, in the middle of which there is a round hole. This hole serves to load the grenade with a fuse, so that the fuse inserted into the grenade could not fall out when thrown. The opening of the lid is closed with a valve. From below, the case is closed by a convex bottom. There is also a round hole in the middle of the bottom for the central tube. The central tube passes through the body of the grenade from the lid to the bottom. Its upper end is strengthened flush with the lid, and the lower end protrudes from the bottom to a distance of about 1 centimeter. The protruding end of the central tube has a screw thread on the outside, onto which the grenade handle is screwed during assembly. At the base of the threaded end of the central tube, a steel braking star is placed, the protruding teeth of which do not allow the handle to be unscrewed from the body in the assembled grenade. The braking sprocket is pressed against the bottom of the housing by a clamping nut screwed on top of it. Rice. 4. Body grenade arrive 1933. 1. Central tube. 2. Braking sprocket. 3. Pin. 4. Valve sunk. On the side of the body of the grenade, a pin is fortified to secure the defensive cover. The tape, figure 3, is made of iron sheets about 0.5 mm thick. These sheets are notched with grooves into squares up to 1 square centimeter to facilitate rupture into fragments. 4 sheets are rolled into a cylinder so that they fit snugly inside the grenade body. Thus, 4 layers of iron fragments lie under the tin case. Explosive charge is designed to explode a grenade. It consists of a strong explosive, the so-called crushing action, much stronger than gunpowder. The charge has the form of a compressed cylindrical checker, weighing 150 grams, with a hole in the middle. This checker is put on with a hole on the central tube of the grenade and is placed inside the body in the space between the central tube and the tape, figure 3. The remaining gaps at the factory are filled with paraffin to protect the charge from moisture. Explosive charge of a hand grenade mod. 1933 is perfectly safe to handle. It explodes only when the fuse explodes inside it, in the central tube of the grenade, as happens when throwing a grenade. Therefore, it is possible to charge a grenade, i.e., insert a fuse into it, only just before throwing. The fuse, figure 5, is always stored separately from the grenade and is inserted into it only before throwing. The fuse consists of an igniter capsule, a remote tube, powder column, and a detonator. All these parts are assembled in a brass tube called a fuse sleeve. The primary igniter explodes at the moment of throwing a grenade from a prick by its striker, see below, handle, and with its explosion ignites a remote powder column. The primer is mounted on the lower open end of the fuse so that the powder column begins just above it. Rice. 5. Hand grenade fuse mod. 1933. 1. Capsule. 2. Remote tube. 3. Detonator. 4. Additional detonator. 5. Sleeve. The remote tube, powder column, lights up from the igniter capsule at the moment the grenade is thrown and burns evenly for 3.5 to 4 seconds. When the entire column burns out, the fire from its upper end is transferred to the detonator. A lit powder column will burn wherever the grenade falls. Therefore, grenades arrive 1933, like other remote action hand grenades, explode in water, mud, snow, etc. The detonator is placed in a red copper sleeve above the powder column. It consists of a small charge, about 2 grams, of a sensitive explosive that can explode from shocks, impacts, metal impalement and fire. When the fire from the powder column reaches the detonator, the latter explodes instantly. From the explosion of the detonator, the explosive charge of the grenade explodes. If the detonator is not strong enough, the explosive charge of the grenade will not fully explode, not all, and the effect of the grenade will be weak. To avoid this, in the heat of a hand grenade arranged 1933, 1 to 2 columns of explosive are placed at the bottom of the fuse sleeve, which enhances the action of the detonator. These posts are called an additional detonator. Due to the sensitivity of the detonator, fuses must be handled carefully, protect them from shocks from strong heating, and store them separately from grenades. In no case should the fuse be disassembled, since in doing so it will inevitably explode in the hands and severely maim or kill to death. The handle serves for convenient grenade action. An ignition mechanism is placed inside it. The handle, figure 6, consists of two tin tubes, outer and inner. The inner tube is inserted into the outer one for half of its length. The tubes are connected to each other by a spiral mainspring, which is fixed at the upper end in the section of the inner tube, and at the bottom, in the bottom of the outer one. When the spring is at rest, its coils lie tightly on top of each other, and the inner tube is completely placed inside the outer one. The outer tube can be pulled back, while the spring is stretched. The ignition mechanism, figure 7, is designed to ignite the fuse primer when throwing a grenade. It consists of a firing brace with a striker, a mainspring, an insert with cutouts for setting the brace on a combat platoon and for lowering it, a safety pin, and a fuse in case of improper loading. The combat brace has the form of a rocker arm with a striker fixed in the middle, figure 3 and 7. With its ends, the rocker is attached to the front cut of the outer tube of the handle, and the shoulders of the rocker pass through the slots in the walls of the inner tube of the handle and the liner. In this case, the drummer is turned with its tip up, towards the open cut of the handle. Rice. 6. Hand grenade handle arrive 1933. 1. Red signal, open. 2. Safety check. Rice. 7. The ignition mechanism of a hand grenade mod. 1933. 1. Combat brace about the drummer. 2. Slots. 3. Mainspring. 4. Insert. 5. Ignition fuse. The mainspring gives the mainstay the force of movement forward when throwing a grenade, which ensures that the igniter primer is pricked by the firing pin. When assembling the grenade mechanism at the factory, the mainspring twists somewhat to the right and all the time tends to turn the outer tube of the handle to the left, around the inner tube. The insert, figure 7, is fixed inside the inner tube of the handle. It is intended for assembling a handle with a grenade body and for installing a combat brace with a striker on the combat and safety platoons. When assembling the handle with the grenade body, the handle is screwed onto the screwed stump of the central tube. To install a combat brace with a striker on the combat and safety platoons, the insert has slots in the side walls along which the arms of the combat brace go, and transverse cuts for the nipple of the safety pins. The shoulders of the bracket go along the deep knees of the slot when the drummer is lowered, which with its tip reaches the fuse primer. When placing the bracket on a combat platoon, her shoulders go into small knees. The transverse cutouts serve, the upper one, to secure the mechanism in the deflated position, and the lower one, to secure the mechanism in the cocked position. The safety pin is used to set the ignition mechanism of the grenade to the safety platoon. The pin is fixed in a transverse groove on the outer tube of the handle. She with her nipple deepens inward and enters the slot and cutouts of the liner. The fuse in case of incorrect loading, figure 3 and 7, is placed inside the liner under the hole with which the liner is screwed onto the central tube of the grenade body. The fuse rests against the bracket with its lower cut, and at the same time, with its upper cut, it covers the insert hole. If a fighter mistakenly tries to load an assembled grenade with a lowered striker, the fuse will hit the fuse and it will be impossible to load the grenade. If there were no fuse, then in the event of improper loading, the fuse would go to the end and the primer would prick on the lowered drummer, then the grenade would catch fire in the hands. The defensive cover, figure 3, is intended to increase the lethal effect of a grenade in defense. It is a steel cylinder with walls up to 1.5 mm thick. To facilitate tearing into fragments, the defensive cover is incised with grooves into pieces about 1 square centimeters. Outside, there is a latch on the case, with which it is fixed on the grenade body by a pin. Preparing a grenade for throwing. When preparing a grenade arranged. In 1933, it is necessary to take action, inspect the grenade, assemble its body with a handle, check the operation of the mechanism, and, finally, load the grenade. Hand grenades mod. 1933 for better preservation are produced from the factory in sealed tin boxes. At the same time, the following are sealed in separate boxes, grenade cases with defensive covers put on them, 25 pieces each, handles, also 25 each, and fuses 26 each, 1 spare. In combat, the handles are screwed to the body at the cartridge points, and in the training environment, at the shooting range, behind the line of fire, by order of the Chief of Combat Nutrition. In both cases, the fighter usually receives an already assembled grenade in his hands. But, nevertheless, he himself should be able to collect it, if necessary, assembling a grenade and checking the operation of its mechanism. Before assembling a grenade, it is necessary to inspect the body of the grenade and the handle and wipe them off, then screw the handle to the body until it stops. When examining the grenade, you need to make sure that the central tube of the body and the inside of the handle are not dusty or clogged. Dust should be removed with a rag, and where necessary, scraped off with a wooden chip. Wipe the grease dry with a rag. In order to screw the handle to the body, you need to take the body of the grenade in your left hand and the handle in your right, figure 8, put it with the liner hole on the screwed stub of the central tube of the body and screw the handle onto the stump until it stops so that the gap between the handle and the bottom of the case was no more than 0.5 millimeters. Otherwise the striker will not reach the primer and the grenades will not explode. Screwed, the handle cannot be unscrewed back, the teeth of the braking sprocket will be delayed. After frilling the grenade, it is necessary to check the operation of its mechanism, namely, the operation of the fuse valve, the protective cover valve and the ease of putting on and taking off the cover itself, the operation of the igniting mechanism. To check the operation of the ignition valve, it is enough to open and close it 2 to 3 times. It should turn easily and be held firmly in the closed position by the hook, otherwise the fuse may fall out of the grenade when thrown. Rice. 8. Screwing the grenade handle arrive 1933 to the core. To check the latch of the defensive cover, you need to put the grenade with the body on the palm of your left hand with the cover latch up, push the valve to the right to the full, take the grenade handle with your right hand, and pull the cover with your left hand and remove it from the grenade body, then put the cover back on the grenade body and slide valve to the left to failure. The valve should move easily and go behind the pin on the body of the grenade with its nipple, and the cover should be freely put on the body and freely removed from it. The mechanism of the freshly assembled grenade is lowered and locked with a safety pin. To check the operation of the mechanism, it is necessary to put it on the safety platoon 2 to 3 times and lower it, figure 9. Rice. 9. Placing a grenade on combat and safety platoons. This is done as follows. You need to take the grenade by the handle in your right hand with the safety pin up and with the thumb of your right hand, move the pin to the left until it stops. In this case, the nipple of the check will come out of the upper transverse cut out of the liner and will become in the slot of the liner. The mechanism will be unlocked. Then grab the body of the grenade with your left hand and gently pull the handle towards you with your right hand, then the outer tube of the handle, together with the combat brace, will slide along the inner tube and move back. The shoulders of the battle brace will go down the deep knees of the slot, while the mainspring will stretch. When the shoulders of the battle brace reach the top of the slot, where the deep and shallow knees connect, you will feel a stop. You can't pull further. At this point, turn the outer tube of the handle to the right as far as possible and release it. In this case, the mainspring will compress and send the outer tube of the handle forward. The arms of the combat brace will go along the small knees of the slot, and the brace, and with it the outer tube of the handle, will not be able to reach the bottom, but will remain in the cocked position. The mainspring will remain stretched and twisted to the right. Therefore, she always pulls the outer tube of the handle forward and to the left. After the handle has been released, you need to push the pin to the right with the thumb of your right hand to the full. In this case, the nipple of the check will go into the lower transverse cut out of the insert and the mechanism will be locked in the cocked position, i.e. it will be on the safety cock. To find out from the appearance of the grenade what position its mechanism is in, you need to see if the outer tube of the handle is pulled from the bottom of the case. If it is drawn by the 7th of August millimeters, the mechanism is cocked. If sleep comes close to the bottom of the case, the mechanism is lowered. The mechanism descends as follows. With the thumb of the right hand, the check is moved to the left to the full in order to unlock the mechanism. When the check is pushed back, a red signal will be found under its right end. This will indicate that the mechanism is in a combat position. Then, with your left hand, grab the body of the grenade, and with your right hand, pull the handle towards you to failure until the shoulders of the bracket reach the top of the slot in the liner, and, finally, release the handle. The mainspring will turn the outer tube of the handle to the left, direct the shoulders of the battle brace along the deep knees of the slot, compress and forcefully send the outer tube of the handle along with the brace forward. The mechanism will descend with a sharp click. This check should be done 2 to 3 times. The mechanism should work without much friction, and the descent should be abrupt. At the end of the check, it is necessary to lock the mechanism in the deflated position, for which push the pin to the right until it stops. The nipple will go into the upper cutout. In a combat situation, a fighter stores a grenade with a deflated and locked mechanism until the moment of loading. Loading a grenade. Loading is done just before the grenade is thrown and is done as follows. Put the grenade mechanism on the safety platoon. C. Checking the ignition mechanism of the grenade. Take the grenade by the body with the left hand, with the body cover up. With the right hand move the fuse valve. Take the fuse with the fingers of the right hand and put it into the central tube of the body with the igniter primer forward. At first, the fuse will go freely, but when the end of 7 to 8 mm remains outside, the fuse will stop, as it rests against the upper cut of the fuse in case of improper loading. But the battle brace was cocked and the lower end of the fuse did not rest against anything, therefore, it is sufficient to gently press the end of the fuse with the thumb of the right hand so that it turns the fuse and fully enters the grenade. Discharging a grenade. A charged grenade cannot be stored due to the possibility of an explosion. Therefore, if a fighter loaded a grenade, but did not have to throw it, he must immediately discharge it. Rice. 10. Loading a grenade arranged 1933. In order to defuse the grenade, you need to take it by the body with your left hand, cover up and slide the fuse valve, covering the central tube with your palm so that the fuse does not pop out. As soon as the valve opens, the fuse, in case of improper loading, will turn under the action of its spring and push out the fuse. The end of the fuse of 7 to 8 mm will come out. After that, take the fuse with the fingers of your right hand, pull it out of the grenade and put it in the bag, then close the valve, lower the grenade ignition mechanism and lock it in the deflated position, and then put the grenade in the bag. Throwing a hand grenade and the work of its parts when throwing. To throw a charged grenade at a target, you need to take the grenade by the handle in your right hand, figure 11, push the pin to the left with your thumb to the full, swing and throw the grenade at the target with a strong throw. Consider what happens at the moment the grenade is thrown. When the grenade is swung forward, its body, together with the inner tube of the handle, under the action of centrifugal force, will stretch the mainspring and move away from the outer tube of the handle, clamped in the fighter's hand, to the maximum distance. The arms of the battle brace will slide back and reach the top of the liner sluts. As soon as the fighter releases the grenade handle from his hand, the mainspring will compress and forcefully pull the outer tube of the handle to the body. The mechanism will go down and the firing pin will prick the fuse primer 3 to 5 meters from the fighter's hand. The primer will ignite the powder remote column, which will burn for 3.5 to 4 seconds. After this time, the fire will reach the detonator and the grenade will explode with a roar. Rice. 11. Hand grenade arranged 1933 in the hand of a thrower before throwing. If an abandoned grenade did not explode in a training environment, it is necessary to notice the place of its fall and report to your commander. In no case should you touch an unexploded grenade yourself. This threatens with death if it is handled ineptly. Hand grenade arranged 1914-30. Hand grenade arranged 1914-30, like a grenade mod. 1933, intended to destroy living targets with shrapnel in attack and defense. It is remote action and explodes 3.5 to 5 seconds after being thrown. The grenade has an external defensive case, the purpose of which is the same as that of the mod. 1933, with a defensive case, a grenade weighs 800 grams, without a case, 700 grams. When a grenade explodes with a case, about 3,000 fragments are obtained, and without a case, about 2,800. The range of damage with a case is up to 100 meters, without a case, 25 meters. Note: it must be borne in mind that when throwing a grenade without a case, 2 to 3 heavy fragments are obtained from the striker, which hit over 100 meters. They must be guarded in the production of training throws at the shooting range. Hand grenade arranged 1914-30 consists of a body with a handle, an explosive charge, an ignition mechanism, a fuse and a defensive cover, figure 12. The body of the grenade is tin, bottle-shaped. Inside, a thin iron grate is laid along the wall, which gives fragments when a grenade explodes. An explosive charge, about 400 grams of strong explosive, fills the entire internal cavity of the grenade and the handle. The charge explodes from the fuse, so when storing a grenade separately from the fuse, it is completely safe. The igniter mechanism is used to ignite the prime igniter fuse when throwing a grenade. It is placed in a longitudinal groove on the side of the grenade body and consists of a striker with a striker and a loop, a trigger, a striker clutch, a mainspring, a safety pin, a cocking lever with a hook and an axis, a lever spring and a safety ring, figure 12. The fuse serves to explode the charge. It is always stored separately from the grenade and is inserted into the grenade just before throwing. To insert a fuse means to charge a grenade, figure 13. The fuse has the form of a tube, curved like the letter G. The upper part of the tube is aluminum, white, and the lower part is copper. Inside, in the heat, 3 parts are distinguished: an igniter primer, placed in a short elbow of the tube, stoping and remote tube, in the neck of the aluminum tube and the upper part of the copper, detonator cap, at the very bottom of the copper tube. The explosive charge of a grenade can only explode from the fuse. The fuse can explode from fire, from a strong blow, from friction. Therefore, the fuse and the loaded, with the fuse attached, grenade require careful handling. A grenade without a fuse is quite safe. Rice. 12. Hand grenade arranged 1914-30. 1. Body. 2. Housing cover. 3. Neck. 4. Handle. 5. The bottom of the handle. 6. Drummer. 7. Clutch striker. 8. Mainspring. 9. Trigger. 10. Guide sleeve. 11. Safety check. 12. Cocking lever. 13. Hook. 14. The axis of the cocking lever. 15. Spring cocking lever. 16. Ring. 17. Ring stop. 18. Lattice. 19. Door. 20. Bursting charge. 21. Fuse. The defensive cover is intended to increase the lethal effect of the grenade. It is a steel cylinder worn on the body of a grenade. The walls of the sheath, 1.5 to 2 mm thick, are notched on the outside into separate squares or triangles to facilitate tearing into fragments, figure 12. Rice. 13. Hand grenade fuse mod. 1914-30. 1. Prime igniter. 2. Hole for the exit of gases. 3. Remote part. 4. Detonator cap. To secure the cover on the body of the grenade, there is a grip that is pressed against the bottom of the body of the grenade by a door that holds the fuse in place. The cover is put on the body of the grenade by simply pushing it from the bottom. Preparing a hand grenade for throwing. To prepare a grenade for throwing, it is necessary to wipe it dry from thick factory grease, check the operation of the ignition mechanism of the grenade and charge it. Grenades are wiped with a dry rag or pre-lubricated with clean kerosene. It is necessary to ensure that no thick lubricant remains on the mainspring, otherwise failures in the explosion will result, since the drummer will not break the primer. Grenades are stored with lower drummers, while the safety check should be behind the trigger, and the ring is put on the grenade handle and tied with twine. Checking the ignition mechanism of the grenade is carried out in the following sequence: untie and discard the twine from the ring, check if the ring fits well with the grenade. To do this, remove and put on the ring several times. It should be put on and taken off completely freely. If the ring is removed with difficulty, it is dangerous to throw a grenade. It can fall very close, delayed by a tight ring. Such a ring must be replaced with a ring from another grenade. Change. Check if the safety pin works well. To do this, push it to the left several times and push it to the right until it stops. The check should walk tightly along its groove. Check the operation of the cocking lever, firing pin and mainspring. To do this, move the safety pin to the left to the full and remove the ring from the grenade handle. Then pull the drummer back by the trigger to failure and at the same moment press the cocking lever with your fingers. At the same time, the hook should firmly grab and hold the drummer. After that, release the cocking lever, it should rise, the hook will release the loop of the drummer, and the drummer will go down with a slight click. Repeat the test 3 to 4 times. Check if the firing pin comes out well. To do this, with the striker lowered, look at the upper end of the chute, from the bottom of the grenade. A sharp striker should stand in the middle of the chute and look out of the hole in the guide sleeve. If the striker is crooked, not in the middle of the chute, then it will not fall into the primer and will not ignite it when throwing a grenade. Check the operation of the entire mechanism as a whole. To do this, remove the ring, push the pin to the left to failure, cock the drummer by the trigger, press the cocking lever and grab the drummer loop with a hook, then slide the safety pin to the right to the full and put the ring on the handle. After that, lower the drummer, for which move the safety pin to the left to failure, and remove the ring from the handle. The drummer should go down with a sharp click. Check if the door on the bottom of the grenade works well, which should hold the fuse in place. The door should turn freely and fit snugly under the hook. Any malfunction found during the inspection should be immediately reported to the squad leader or the person in charge of the lesson. Loading and unloading a grenade. Before loading a grenade, you need to put the drummer on the safety platoon. To do this, take the grenade in the right hand by the handle so that the cocking lever is on top. Without pressing the lever with your fingers, remove the ring with the fingers of the left hand, move the safety pin to the left with the thumb of the left hand to the full, with the thumb and forefinger of the left hand, pull the drummer by the trigger to failure. At the same moment, press the fingers of the right hand on the rear end of the cocking lever. The hook will capture the loop of the drummer. Push the safety pin to the right with the thumb of the left hand to the full. It will be in front of the trigger. With your left hand, put the ring on the grenade handle until it stops. A grenade can only be loaded with the striker cocked and set to the safety platoon. Grenade range 1914-30 does not have a fuse in case of incorrect loading. Therefore, if you try to insert the fuse with the firing pin lowered, the primer will stick on the firing pin and ignite. The grenade is loaded like this. Take the grenade in your left hand and hold it by the body upside down. Turn the door with the fingers of the right hand so that it does not block the chute for the neck of the fuse. Take the fuse with the fingers of the right hand and insert it into the grenade so that the long end enters the thimble in the middle of the bottom of the grenade, and the short end enters the upper end of the chute where the drummer walks. Strongly press the thumb of the right hand on the fuse from above so that it fits tightly into place. Figure 14. Turn the door so that it is across the neck of the fuse and goes under the hook. If the fuse does not enter freely into the grenade, you can strongly but smoothly press on it with the thumb of your right hand. But in no case should you hammer the fuse into a grenade with blows of anything, a stick, a shovel, a butt, etc. From this a grenade can explode and kill. For safety reasons, it is forbidden to keep a grenade loaded. Rice. 14. Loading a hand grenade mod. 1914-30. If the grenade is loaded, but it was not necessary to throw it, then the grenade must be defused immediately. In order to defuse the grenade, you need to open the door, carefully pull the fuse out of the grenade by the neck, close the door again and put the fuse into the bag, putting on and taking off the protective cover. Defensive covers for grenades arranged 1914-30 are stored separately. You can put on a cover both on an unloaded and on a charged grenade. The cover is put on like this. Open the door at the bottom of the grenade body, take the cover and slide it onto the body of the grenade so that the split end of the grip passes the door hook through itself, and the grip lies close to the bottom of the grenade body. Close the door to secure the case to the body of the grenade. If a defensive cover was put on a grenade, and you have to throw a grenade not from a trench, for example, when going on a counterattack, you must remove the cover before throwing so as not to hit yourself and your neighbors in battle order with fragments. In order to remove the cover, you need to open the door, remove the cover towards the bottom of the grenade and throw it, then close the door again. Throwing a grenade arranged 1914-30. To throw a charged grenade, you need to take it in your right, left-handed, in your left hand and squeeze the handle so that the cocking lever looks forward from the palm and the front of the ring is between the ring and middle fingers. Press the rear end of the lever with your fingers to failure. With the thumb of the left hand, move the safety pin to the left to the full. Then swing strongly and throw the grenade at the target with a steep throw so that the rings remain in the hand. When thrown, the drummer descends, strikes the igniter primer with a striker and explodes it. The remote part of the fuse lights up from the igniter capsule. 5 seconds after the throw, the fire reaches the blasting cap and the grenade explodes. When throwing, in order to hit the target and not injure yourself and your comrades, you must strictly observe the following rules. Do not throw grenades with a faulty mechanism, with a broken door or pin, with tight rings, etc. Never remove the safety ring beforehand. In practical exercises, during a grenade explosion, it is necessary to take cover behind the cover. If the grenade did not explode, do not touch it yourself, but report to the commander or instructor in charge of the exercise. In a defensive battle, throw grenades with a defensive case only from a trench, and in an attack, be sure to remove the case. F. One-hand grenade. The F. One-hand grenade, figure 15, is intended to destroy living targets with shrapnel only in defense. It is remote action and explodes 3.5 to 4.5 seconds after being thrown. A loaded grenade with a screwed-in fuse weighs about 700 grams. It does not have a defensive cover, but the body of the grenade itself produces about 1,000 heavy fragments during an explosion, which hit 200 meters from the explosion site. The grenade consists of a body, an explosive charge, a blank plug and a Koveshnikov fuse, figure 15. The body of the grenade is cast iron, egg-shaped. Outside, it is incised with grooves into squares, fragments. From above, the grenade has a screwed hole through which an explosive charge is poured, and a fuse is screwed in before throwing. The fuses are stored separately from the grenades, and the storage hole is screwed with a blank cork made of stainless material. An explosive charge, about 60 grams of a strong explosive, is placed inside the grenade body and explodes only from the detonator. Rice. 15. F1 grenade. 1. Grenade body. 2. Blank plug. 3. Bursting charge. 4. The core of the fuse. 5. Prime igniter fuse. 6. Powder composition. 7. Detonator cap. 8. Drummer. 9. Hole in the drummer for safety checks. 10. Safety ball. 11. Mainspring. 12. Safety cap. 13. Cap spring. Note: the outer lever of the fuse is not visible, it is behind the drawing. A blank plug, figure 16, is intended to protect the bursting charge from dampness during storage of grenades. It is screwed into the grenade hole with a threaded part, which is lubricated with a special cannon grease. The lower rod of the cork at the same time goes deep into the powdered bursting charge and leaves a hole in it for the fuse detonator. Before loading the grenade, the blank plug, figure 16, is unscrewed from it and thrown out. The fuse, Ras. 17, is intended for the explosion of the explosive charge of the grenade. It consists of the fuse itself and the ignition mechanism, which are assembled together with the fuse box, skeleton. Rice. 16. Idle tube. Rice. 17. Fuse. 1. The core of the fuse. 2. Thimble detonator cap. 3. Safety cap. 4. Outer lever of the cap. 5. Delay ledge on the fuse core. 6. Safety check. 7. Prime igniter. 8. Powder composition. 9. Detonator cap. 10. Drummer. 11. Safety ball. 12. Mainspring. 13. Cap spring. The core of the fuse is a brass tube with external and internal screw threads. The assembled fuse is screwed into the upper hole of the grenade with the outer thread of the core, and the fuse itself is screwed into the inner thread. The fuse consists of an igniter capsule, a powder composition, and a detonator capsule. All these parts are assembled in a red copper thimble. The ignition mechanism of the fuse is placed in the core of the fuse above the igniter capsule. It consists of a striker, a mainspring, a safety ball, a safety cap with an external lever, a cap spring and a safety pin with a ring, figure 17. The fuse is assembled at the factory into a combat position, while the parts of the ignition mechanism are in the following position. The drummer is cocked, the mainspring is compressed between the bottom of the core of the fuse and the drummer is held in the cocked position by a safety ball and a safety pin. The ball fuse is inserted into the hole in the wall of the core of the fuse and lies half in this wall, and half in a special recess of the drummer, so it prevents the drummer from going down. Outside, a protective cap is tightly pushed onto the core of the fuse, which does not allow the ball to fall out. The spring of the cap is compressed inside between the bottom of the cap and the fuse box. The safety pin is inserted and passes through the slot of the safety cap. The walls of the core of the fuse and the drummer, the check horns are unbent. The flame cannot be disassembled. Preparing a grenade for throwing. To prepare a grenade for throwing, you need to charge it. To do this, you need to unscrew a blank plug from the grenade hole and throw it. Check if there is a recess left in the explosive charge from the blank plug rod. If not left, the charge crumbled. You need to make a recess in the charge with a stick, then take the fuse and insert it into the grenade hole so that the detonator tube falls into the recess in the charge, then screw the fuse into the grenade hole until it stops. When preparing a grenade for throwing, it must be remembered that if particles of an explosive charge get into the thread of the grenade point, they must be cleaned out before starting to screw in the fuse. When screwing in the fuse, the entire thread may not be screwed in. In this case, it is enough if 3 to 4 turns come in. Throwing grenades. F1 hand grenades can only be thrown from a trench. To throw, you need to take a charged grenade in your right or left hand so that the outer lever of the safety cap is away from you. Figure 18. Press the lever against the body of the grenade with the fingers of the right hand. Spread the horns of the safety check with the fingers of your free hand and pull it out by the rings, strongly swinging. Throw a grenade at the target with steep throws. At the same time, you yourself should hide from the fragments behind the closure. When thrown, the cap spring unclenches and shifts the cap upward, the hole in which the fuse ball lies opens, the ball pops out and releases the drummer, the mainspring is unclenched and forcefully pushes the drummer down, the firing pin explodes the small primer, the fire from the primer ignites the remote powder composition, after 3.5 to 4.5 seconds, the fire reaches the detonator, and the grenade explodes. Throwing a grenade, you need to remember the following. The removed safety pin cannot be inserted back, therefore, having taken out the check, it is necessary to immediately throw a grenade. Rice. 18. Hand grenade brand F, one in the hand of a thrower. Fragments of a grenade hit up to 200 meters from the explosion site. So, you need to hide from them behind the closure. If the thrown grenade did not explode, do not touch it yourself, but report to the commander in charge of the occupation. Throwing hand grenades. Hand grenades are a formidable melee weapon for infantry when used skillfully. To use them skillfully means to be able to throw it quickly, far and accurately, be able to hit any target with a grenade, into a trench, into a fleeing enemy group, into the window of a house defended by the enemy, into a machine gun nest, into a tank, etc. Throwing grenades at various targets requires special skills and training. This training is achieved by exercises with blank grenades, blanks, and only as the completion of the training of a grenade launcher in peacetime, 1 to 2 throws of combat hand grenades are performed. In war, grenade launchers trained in peacetime will only use live grenades. All throwing rules stated here apply to combat hand grenades. Basic requirements for a grenade launcher. A grenade launcher must know the design and operation of hand grenade mechanisms very well, handling live grenades, rules for storing and saving them in the service, combat properties of grenades and the possibility of using one or another sample in various cases of a combat situation. He should be perfectly able to quickly prepare a grenade for action in any conditions, in a calm environment, under fire, at night, in smoke, etc. Quickly, far and accurately throw a grenade, quickly take cover from fragments of your own or enemy grenades. Finally, for the successful use of combat hand grenades, a grenade launcher must have complete composure and calmness, must be confident in his grenade and the ability to wield it. He must firmly remember that the grenade is completely safe to handle and terrible for the enemy. A fully trained grenade launcher should be able to throw grenades. 1. From a standing position with a run of 35 to 45 meters. 2. From a standing position from the bottom of the trench at 30 to 35 meters. 3. From a standing position from a place for 35 to 40 meters. 4. From a kneeling position for 25 to 30 meters. 5. From a prone position at 20 to 25 meters. In all these cases, grenades should fall no further than 1 meter from the target, and when thrown through windows, they should hit the window. Finally, the throwing speed should reach 5 to 6 grenades in 1 minute, or 10 to 12 seconds for throwing 1 grenade, counting from the fire command until the fuse primer ignites. Ways to throw grenades at various targets. Throwing a hand grenade can be done with the power of one hand or the power of the hand and the effort of the whole body of the thrower, increasing the push. Both methods can be used either without a rifle or with a rifle in hand. Depending on the targets for which throwing is carried out, the following types of throwing are distinguished: throwing at horizontal targets, trenches, the enemy in the folds of the terrain; throwing at vertical targets, windows, loopholes, gaps between trees in the forest; throwing at moving targets, tanks, fleeing enemy groups. With the power of one hand, hand grenades are thrown only during initial training in order to teach the fighter to hold a grenade correctly and release it from his hands correctly. In a combat situation, throwing with the force of only the hand can be used when a fighter is in a cramped position, when it is impossible to swing wide, for example, when throwing grenades down from the windows of houses, from narrow trenches or crevices, from a tank or armored car through a hatch, etc. In all other cases, throwing is performed with the participation of the whole body, which increases the push. In combat, throwing is always done with a rifle. With a rifle, you also need to throw blank grenades. Throwing in the trench. In battle, when attacking, you have to throw a grenade from the move. If you manage to crawl unnoticed to the enemy's trench or had to dig in under his fire, not reaching the trench 25 to 35 meters, then you will have to throw a grenade lying down or from your knees. Soldiers load hand grenades at the line of accumulation for an attack, remove their protective covers from them and put them in grenade bags. In the attack, when 50 to 55 meters are left to the enemy's trench, you need to hold the rifle in your left hand, on the run get a loaded grenade out of your bag with your right hand, quickly throw the rifle under the armpit of your left hand and, having both hands free, move the grenade safety pin, then again take the rifle in the left hand and in the right hold the grenade in the throwing position. When 35 to 45 meters remain before the enemy's trench, each fighter should be able to estimate by whether he will throw his grenade to the trench, swing the grenade strongly and throw it into the trench with the steepest possible throw so that it falls from above to the bottom of the trench. For the throw, it is by no means necessary to stop, but on the contrary, to increase the force of the throw by the inertia of the run. Throwing a grenade, you need to quickly take the rifle into position for a strike with bayonets and run forward as quickly as possible. The burning time of the fuse of our offensive hand grenades is calculated so that when the soldiers are 20 to 25 meters from the trench, a flurry of explosions will be heard. The fighters themselves at such a distance will be safe, and the enemy in the trench will suffer losses, be stunned and become easy prey for the attacker. You should not throw grenades to those fighters who are 5 meters or more behind the lead fighter on the run, otherwise the belated explosions of their grenades can be dangerous for the lead fighters. When throwing in a trench from a prone position or from a knee, it is necessary, hiding in a fold of terrain or in a prone trench, to put a rifle on the ground near the left hand, remove the loaded grenade from the bag with your right hand and use your left hand to move the safety pin. In this case, grenades can also be thrown with defensive covers if they have not been removed beforehand. Throwing a grenade, you must immediately lie down, snuggle up to the ground for the duration of the grenade burst, simultaneously take a rifle in your left hand and prepare for an attack. As soon as grenade explosions are heard, quickly jump up and, with a cry of hurrah, burst into the enemy's trench and finish him off with a bayonet. In preparing to throw grenades, the fighters should outline for themselves the most important targets which, with their fire, delayed our attack. Such targets will be enemy machine guns and groups of his shooters. Grenades should be thrown at these targets in the first place in order to force the enemy to cease fire. Throwing at vertical targets. In combat, such throwing will take place when attacking houses occupied by the enemy, firing from loopholes. To knock the enemy out of the house's attics, you need to hit the window loopholes with a hand grenade so that the grenade explodes inside the room. To do this, grenade launchers, under the cover of fire from their machine guns, shooters and rifle grenade launchers, use enclosures, gradually get close to the wall of the attacked house and stand against the walls so that the fire from the trench could not hit them. The grenade launchers then place their rifles against the wall to free both hands. With the right hand they take out loaded grenades from the bags, move the fuses and throw the grenades at the windows with a strong swing. After the explosion, the grenades break into the inside of the house, destroying or capturing the surviving enemy. In these cases, the fighters sometimes still have to blast their way through barricaded entrances or make breaches right in the walls with an explosion of grenades. Throwing through the windows requires special accuracy, since in case of a miss, the grenade, hitting the wall or frame binding, will fall to the ground and may hit its own. The difference between throwing at vertical targets and throwing at trenches is that here the throw is not steep, but straight, that is, the grenade does not fly in a steep arc, but directly to the target. In the same way, grenade launchers make their way with grenades, knocking the enemy out of the forest, where low-growing tree branches interfere with the steep throwing of grenades. Throwing on moving chains. When throwing remote hand grenades or bundles of grenades at moving targets, it is necessary to take into account the movement of the target and throw grenades in such a way that the target either stops or comes close to the fallen grenades at the moment of their explosion. In battle, such throwing is used to repulse the attack of enemy tanks and infantry. Throwing at attacking infantry. Grenade fighters defending the trench load grenades when the enemy approaches 200 to 300 meters and accumulates for an attack. They place loaded grenades under their arms on the trench berm or in special niches in the front steepness of the trench. At the same time, defensive covers remain put on grenades. Cast iron defensive grenades can also be used. When the enemy rushes to the attack and approaches 50 to 60 meters, the fighters, at the command of the squad commanders, they put rifles on the parapet or put them to the front steepness of the trench. Take charged grenades and push back, take out the fuses. On the command of fire, they throw grenades so that they fall 8 to 10 meters ahead of the attacking enemy. Throwing grenades, the fighters cover their heads behind the parapet for the duration of the explosions. After the explosions, they quickly take rifles to shoot the retreating enemy or meet him with a bayonet strike. If the enemy tries to linger and dig in front of the trenches, it is necessary to destroy him by repeated throwing of grenades. Throwing hand grenades at tanks. Of the hand grenades we have, the hand grenades model 1914-30 without defensive covers are the most convenient for action on tanks. One such grenade cannot hit a tank. In order to hit the tank, you need to link 5 to 6 grenades. When the tank approaches 35 to 40 meters, the fighter takes such a bunch of grenades, pushes the safety pin at the middle grenade fuse, and, strongly swinging to the side, and if space allows, then down, throws the bunch along the path of the tank, after which he immediately takes the next pin to be ready to re-roll if need be. If the fighter correctly calculated the lead and direction of the tank, the explosion will occur under the tank and disable it, stop it. Throwing heavy bundles of grenades at tanks should be specially trained, strong and exceptionally courageous fighters. The throwing range is up to 20 meters. Skillful, courageous grenade launchers can inflict very heavy losses on tanks. The report of the Spanish Revolutionary Government notes that one fighter disabled 14 enemy fascist tanks with hand grenades. Storage and preservation of hand grenades and fuses for them. In a peaceful environment, grenade launchers do not have to keep live hand grenades on their hands. They receive live grenades only at the shooting range, only a few times during their service. But in wartime, at the front, a hand grenade becomes a constant companion of a grenade launcher, along with a rifle. A fighter will always and in all conditions in a combat situation carry at least 2 combat hand grenades with fuses. Therefore, while studying in a peaceful environment, a fighter must firmly master the rules for storing and saving hand grenades and fuses for them in order to have grenades always ready for battle and not expose themselves and their comrades to the danger of accidental damage if stored improperly. How to protect hand grenades and fuses for them. When storing hand grenades and fuses for them, it must be remembered that a grenade is a combination of a metal mechanism with a bursting charge and a very sensitive bursting charge enclosed in a metal tube, fuse. The metal mechanism of a grenade can deteriorate from rusting and strong shocks and impacts, which can bend, dent or break the fragile parts of the mechanism and disrupt their operation. This means that in order to keep the grenade mechanism in good condition, it is necessary to protect the grenade from rust, shocks and shocks. The bursting charge of a hand grenade is a highly effective crushing explosive, tightly sealed inside the grenade body. The properties of the explosive used in hand grenades are as follows. If properly stored, this explosive will last for many years. It is completely safe to handle, as it is not afraid of shocks, blows, or even fire, and, being in good condition, explodes only when the fuse detonator explodes inside it. If the explosive charge becomes damp, then it will not explode from the fuse detonator. When throwing such faulty grenades, but with serviceable fuses, when the detonator explodes, the body of the grenade will burst, but the explosive in the grenade will scatter on the ground. The grenade will not defeat, but the damage is not limited to this. If the explosive is allowed to decompose further from dampness, it may become dangerous to handle and cause an accidental explosion from shock or from intense heat. If the body of the grenade is covered with a solid crust of rust, which will eat through the metal somewhere, then such grenades are not given to the fighters, but destroyed. If a fighter finds such grenades in a combat situation, when capturing enemy trenches, he should not touch them, but immediately report to his commander to take the necessary measures. Thus, the bursting charge of a grenade should mainly be protected from dampness, as well as from strong impacts, in case of some malfunction of the charge. The fuse requires especially careful storage, as the explosive charge contained in it can explode from strong impacts, fire, or strong heat. In addition, the shell of the fuse deteriorates from rust, and the charge, like the bursting charge of a grenade, deteriorates from dampness. This means that fuses must be protected from shocks, blows, especially carefully, from fire and strong heating, and from rusting, which under normal conditions comes from dampness. Finally, we must always firmly remember that the fuse is more sensitive and requires more careful handling than a grenade, that without a fuse, a serviceable grenade will never explode, and with a fuse, if handled incorrectly, it can explode by accident. Therefore, it is always necessary to store grenades unloaded, that is, fuses separately from grenades. Load only before throwing a grenade. How grenades and fuses are stored before being issued to fighters. Before being handed over to soldiers, combat hand grenades and fuses for them are stored for years in military warehouses. At the same time, grenades and fuses are tightly, as they say hermetically, air does not pass inside, sealed in special boxes. To protect against rust, grenades are stored in boxes richly lubricated with grease, and fuses are wrapped in dry paper. In these boxes, grenades and fuses in the war are transported in gigs and cars after our units. When transporting over the area, shocks cannot be completely avoided. Therefore, in order to protect grenades and fuses from damage during transportation, they are placed inside the boxes on special fittings so that they do not beat against each other or against the walls of the boxes. How to store and carry grenades and fuses. When issuing combat hand grenades and fuses to them, grenades and fuses are carefully inspected so that faulty ones do not fall into the hands of fighters. It is necessary to carefully inspect the body of the grenade, the handle, and all the details of the mechanism. There should be no rust anywhere. If there is a slight coating of rust anywhere, it must be removed immediately with gun grease and wooden sticks. Hand grenades mod. 1933 are inspected assembled. Rules for inspecting the ignition mechanism of hand grenades mod. 1933, see pages 22, 23, and Pomegranate arrive 1914-30, pp 29, 30. Grenades with detected malfunctions of the mechanism are not issued to fighters. At grenades arranged 1914-30, the twine that attaches the rings to the handles is untied and thrown. For F1 grenades, the igniter mechanism is placed in the fuse and it is impossible to check its operation, since it always stands in a combat position. When checking the F1 grenade itself, the blank plug of the grenade charging point is unscrewed with a key and then screwed back on again by hand. This cork in grenades issued to soldiers should be freely unscrewed and screwed in with the fingers so that a grenade can be quickly loaded in battle. When examining the fuses, it is necessary to carefully monitor that there is no rust on them. If even a very light coating is found somewhere, it must be cleaned off immediately, and if the coating is not cleaned off, then the fuse is not issued to the soldiers. A fighter who has received grenades in his hands, first of all, must bring them into such a state that they can be quickly brought into combat position in any situation. To do this, wipe the grenades clean from the thick factory grease covering them. This should be done especially carefully in winter, since the lubricant on the mainspring can harden and the grenades will not explode. For wiping grenades, it is necessary to prepare a rag and cut out special sticks for throwing out thickened grease from the parts of the igniting mechanism of hand grenades mod. 1933 and 1914-30, and from external cuts in the body of AF1 grenade. In winter, grenades are wiped in a warm room to cleanly remove grease. When the bodies of the grenades and the parts of the ignition mechanism are wiped dry with factory grease, the fighter should take a piece of clean rag soaked in gun grease and lightly grease all the metal parts of the grenade so that it does not rust. Salting the grenade should be very easy, otherwise it will slide in your hand. In winter, after cleaning the grenade in a warm room, the fighter must fire the hand grenade mod. 1914-30, check again in the cold. This is necessary because unremoved grease may remain in the coils of the mainspring. The fighter puts the checked grenades into the grenade bag and the fuses into a special box, which he also puts later into the grenade bag under the lid. With further storage of hand grenades and fuses in a combat situation, the grenade launcher observes the following rules. Wears a grenade bag on himself, as it should be in the form of clothing. At the same time, it always protects it from shocks and blows, especially when crawling. Protects the bag with grenades from rain, sleet, and, if possible, observes that the bag does not get wet when crossing water barriers. If, nevertheless, the grenade bag turns out to be soaked, it is necessary to dry it at the very first halt, and carefully wipe the grenades and fuses and grease them with gun grease. Periodically, every 3 to 5 days, it is necessary to inspect grenades and fuses, wiping them from dust and checking the operation of the mechanism. If any malfunctions are found, immediately report to the squad leader. In battle, a fighter must always have a bag with grenades at hand and protect it from bullets and shell fragments, covering it on temporary firing lines when attacking behind the parapet of a trench lying down or in folds of the terrain, and when defending in trenches, on a berm or in a specially dug niche in the forward steepness of the trench. When the grenade is used up, he reports to his squad leader. Memo to a grenade launcher on the storage and handling of combat hand grenades. Always keep grenades unloaded. Load grenades just before throwing, in the offensive, at the line of accumulation for an attack, in defense, when the enemy accumulates for an attack. Strictly follow the rules for preparing a grenade for throwing. Never push back the safety pins of grenades arranged 1933 and 1914-30, and even more so, do not take out checks from the fuse of Koveshnikov. Do not remove the ring from the grenade arranged 1914-30. It will remain in the hand when thrown. Throw only hand grenades mod. 1933 and 1914-30 without defensive covers. If, going on the attack, you fall behind the comrades in front by 5 meters or more, do not throw hand grenades at all. Those who go ahead will do it. In defense, throwing hand grenades with defensive cases or grenades of the F1 brand, cover your head behind the parapet for the duration of the explosion. Never try to disassemble the fuse. Protect grenades and fuses from strong blows and from fire. Don't try to use faulty grenades. Do not pick up unexploded grenades, but report to the squad leader. Do not touch badly rusted grenades. If you find them on the battlefield, then report to the squad leader. Thank you for downloading the book from the royallib.com free e-library, http://royallib.com. Leave a review about the book, http://royallib.com/comment/Pruntsov_Vasily_Vladic_Rachnoi_Granadoi.html. All books by the author, http://royallib.com/author/Pruntsov_Vasily.html.